I never imagined I'd be sitting in my dimly lit apartment at 2 in the morning, staring at my laptop screen, feeling like my entire life had just unraveled. But here I was, typing out my story, trying to make sense of how everything had gone so wrong. It was supposed to be a simple Christmas visit, a time for family and warmth. Instead, it became the moment I realized I had been nothing more than a walking, talking bank account to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. For context, I'm 33, and I've spent the last decade clawing my way up the ranks in corporate finance. It wasn't an easy road. I worked 70-hour weeks, juggled relentless deadlines, and navigated the kind of office politics that could make or break a career. The first few years were brutal. I lived out of a tiny studio apartment, surviving on instant noodles and black coffee while trying to prove myself. But I made it. I wasn't filthy rich, but I was comfortable. I had a solid 6-figure salary, a respectable savings account, and, most importantly, the ability to help my parents when they fell on hard times. When the pandemic hit, their small family-run bookstore, the one they had poured their lives into, took a devastating blow. Foot traffic disappeared. Online sales couldn't make up the difference, and before long, they were drowning in debt. So I did what any good son would do. I stepped in. At first, it was small amounts. A couple of $100s here and there to cover bills, groceries, the mortgage. But then it became a regular thing. I set up an automatic transfer of $2,500 every month. It wasn't pocket change, but I could afford it, and they needed it. Or at least, that's what they told me. For 3 years, I kept those payments going. I sacrificed vacations, put off upgrading my car, and ignored the nagging voice in the back of my mind that whispered, "Is this really helping them?" But whenever doubts crept in, I pushed them away. They were my parents. They had raised me, supported me, loved me. And in return, I would make sure they never had to struggle. I thought I was doing the right thing. Then Christmas happened. It started with a phone call from my mother a week before the holiday. Her voice was unusually cheerful, dripping with the kind of forced enthusiasm that sent a warning bell clanging in my brain. "Oh, sweetheart, we're so excited to have you over for Christmas this year. We've got a big surprise for you." A surprise. I should have known right then that something was off, but I was too caught up in the holiday spirit to think much of it. I wrapped up my last few projects at work, booked my flight, and showed up at their front door on Christmas Eve, arms loaded with gifts. The first thing that hit me was how different the house looked. Gone was the slightly outdated, well-loved home I had grown up in. In its place was a pristine, fully renovated space that looked like it belonged in an interior design magazine. Marble countertops, brand new furniture, a massive flat-screen TV that made my own look like an ancient relic. For a moment, I just stood there, blinking in confusion. Then my mother beamed at me, gesturing grandly. "What do you think? Isn't it wonderful? We finally made some upgrades." Upgrades. That was an understatement. I forced a smile, stepping inside as my mind raced. Where had they gotten the money for this? Had business picked up? Had they received some kind of loan? Or had they been lying to me for years? Before I could ask, my father clapped a hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward the dining room. The table was overflowing with an expensive-looking holiday spread, prime rib, lobster, an array of imported wines. It looked more like a 5-star restaurant than the modest Christmas dinners we used to have. I swallowed down the unease bubbling in my stomach and sat down. That's when my younger brother, Evan, sauntered in, dressed in designer clothes, a gold watch glinting on his wrist. I hadn't seen him in almost a year, but it didn't take a genius to know he was doing very well for himself. Too well. "Hey, bro." He grinned, dropping into the seat across from me. "Glad you could make it." My mother poured herself a glass of wine, her eyes darting between me and my father. "We actually wanted to talk to you about something tonight." I slowly set my fork down. "Oh." My father cleared his throat, shifting in his seat. "We've been thinking, now that Evan is getting his business off the ground, it might be time to adjust things a little." My stomach twisted. "Adjust what?" "The monthly support," my mother said smoothly, smiling as if she wasn't about to drive a knife into my back. "You've been so generous, but Evan is trying to launch his company, and he needs some help. We thought maybe you could." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You're joking." My father frowned. "Now, son, you're actually asking me to increase my payments? After everything I've already given you?" Evan scoffed. "Dude, it's not a big deal. You make plenty of money, and I turned to him, anger flaring. "And you do what, exactly?" "Last I checked, you dropped out of college, spent the last 5 years hopping between business ventures, And now you're sitting here wearing a Rolex, expecting me to fund your next failure. Evan's face darkened. That's not fair. No, I snapped. What's not fair is me working my ass off while you sit around burning through money that isn't even yours. Silence crashed over the table. My mother's smile had vanished. My father's jaw was tight. I took a slow breath, pushing back my chair. I think I've lost my appetite. My mother's voice wavered. Sweetheart, don't be like this. We're family. I stared at her. Funny. I thought family was supposed to care about each other, not just what they can get from them. Without another word, I grabbed my coat, turned, and walked out. I didn't look back. The cold night air hit me like a slap as I stepped out of the house, my hands clenched into fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. My breath came out in short, sharp puffs, but it had nothing to do with the winter chill. My mind was spinning, replaying every single moment at that dinner table, the sheer audacity of it all. They had sat there, smiling, eating, drinking, basking in their newly renovated home, while they asked me for more. After I had already sacrificed so much, I fumbled with my car keys, cursing under my breath as they slipped from my numb fingers. I forced myself to take a deep breath, shaking off the growing rage that threatened to consume me. I needed to cool down to process this. Because right now, I wasn't thinking clearly, and I knew it. Just as I bent down to pick up my keys, I heard the door swing open behind me. Evan's voice rang out, laced with irritation. Dude, are you seriously leaving? I exhaled sharply before turning around. He was standing in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, the smugness still lingering on his face despite everything. Yeah, I said flatly. I am. Evan scoffed. Man, you're overreacting. We were just talking. I shook my head, barely able to hold back the bitterness lacing my words. You weren't talking. You were demanding. Again. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he stepped forward, lowering his voice like he was about to let me in on some grand secret. Look, he said, I get it. You feel like you've been carrying the weight, and yeah, you've helped out. But bro, I'm trying to build something here. I've got this opportunity, you know? Something big. It's just... I cut him off. What is it this time, Evan? Another startup? Another business venture? What happened to the last one? And the one before that? His eyes flickered with annoyance. Those were different. This one's real. Real. I let out a cold laugh. Like how real the bookstore's financial struggles were? Evan blinked, caught off guard. I took a step closer, voice lowering. I know, Evan. I know about the sale. I know about the renovations, the new car, the trips. You and Mom and Dad played me. For 3 years. The shift in his expression was so quick it was almost impressive. The surprise flickered for only a second before it melted into something else, something more calculated. He rolled his eyes. So what? You're mad we didn't tell you? That's dramatic, dude. We needed help. And besides, he smirked, it's not like you couldn't afford it. There it was. The real truth, laid bare. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Wow, you actually believe that, don't you? That because I could afford it, I should? That I owed it to you? He shrugged. Yeah, you're the successful one, man. The one who made it out. And family takes care of each other. I stared at him, trying to find even a sliver of shame in his eyes. But there was none. Family takes care of each other? I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. Funny. I've been taking care of all of you for years. But what have you done for me, Evan? Name one time you ever lifted a damn finger to help me. Silence. His smirk faltered just a little, but he held his ground. That's what I thought. I turned away, gripping my car door handle. Dude, come on, he called after me, his voice taking on a more desperate edge. You're seriously going to let some money ruin our relationship? I froze, my grip tightening. Then I turned back, laughing. A bitter, humorless laugh. Money didn't ruin this, Evan. You did. And with that, I got in my car and drove away. I barely slept that night. The second I got back to my hotel, I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling while my thoughts churned like a storm. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. The worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the manipulation. It was the fact that they had expected me to keep giving. That they had counted on it, like it was my duty, my obligation. It was the entitlement. And I knew without a doubt, that if I didn't do something, it would never stop. So I made a decision. By the time morning came, my mind was clear. I reached for my phone and called my bank. I need to cancel a recurring transfer, I said. Of course, the representative replied. Which one? I exhaled slowly. The one to my parents. There was a pause. All right. Would you like to stop future transfers as well? I clenched my jaw. Yes. Effective immediately. It was done. A strange sense of relief settled over me as I ended the call. For the first time in years, I felt free. But I wasn't done yet. Because if they thought they could take advantage of me, if they thought they could lie, manipulate, and still come out on top, they were in for a hell of a wake-up call. The silence after I ended that call was deafening. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't tied to them financially. No more monthly drains on my account. No more sacrificing my own life for the sake of their lies. And yet, the anger hadn't faded. It sat there, simmering beneath my skin, a constant reminder that this wasn't over. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I spent the next few hours doing what I did best, analyzing, strategizing, preparing. If they had treated me like an ATM, then it was time to treat them like a liability. I started with their financials. I still had access to the joint account I had set up for them back when I thought they needed my help. I pulled up the records, scanning through 3 years of withdrawals, deposits, and spending patterns. It was worse than I thought. There were transfers from that account to Evan's personal one, thousands of dollars at a time. Expenses labeled as household bills that were clearly for luxury purchases. A few withdrawals from sketchy online investment platforms, no doubt one of Evan's get-rich-quick schemes. And then there were the credit cards. I had helped them pay off their debts when the pandemic hit. I had cleared their balances, thinking I was giving them a fresh start. Instead, they had run them back up again, maxed out limits on cards I didn't even know they had. The kicker? The payments I had been making weren't even covering the minimum amounts due. They had been keeping up appearances while drowning themselves in more debt behind my back. The realization was like a slap to the face. They had never needed my money. They had needed a safety net for their recklessness. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. I could feel my pulse pounding, my hands gripping the edge of the desk. Enough. If they wanted to live like this, that was their choice. But I wasn't going to let them ruin me in the process. I picked up my phone and dialed the second number on my list. Hey, Rick, I said when my financial advisor picked up. We need to talk about a few accounts I want closed. The next day, I was back at the airport, watching the departure screens flip through cities I wished I was flying to. Somewhere far away. Somewhere I didn't have to think about my family and the mess they had created. Instead, I was heading home. It was done. The accounts were closed. The automatic payments were terminated. I had officially cut them off. But there was still one last thing I needed to do. I was halfway through my layover when the first call came in. Mom. I let it ring. A few minutes later, a text popped up. Mom, sweetheart, I think something's wrong with the bank. Our account isn't letting me transfer money. Can you check? I ignored it. Then another text. Mom, honey, we need to talk. Call me when you land. Then Evan. Evan, dude. WTF. Just tried to buy something and my card got declined. I smirked. Another message followed. Evan, did you seriously cut us off? Are you kidding? After everything we've done for you? My blood boiled at that last line. Everything they had done for me? I nearly replied right then and there, but I stopped myself. No, not yet. I had one last card to play. The moment I landed, my phone started ringing again. This time, I answered. Ryan. Mom's voice was frantic, her usual composed, guilt-laced tone replaced by sheer panic. Honey, something's wrong with our account. The bank won't let us. I know, I said, cutting her off. Because I closed it. Silence. Then, what? You heard me. My voice was calm. Cold. I cut you off. No more money. No more support. No more bailing you out. Ryan, sweetheart, let's just... No, I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. Not this time. I know about the bookstore. I know you sold it months ago. I know you've been using my money to fund Evan's bullshit. I know about the credit cards, the vacations, the renovations. I know everything. Her breath hitched. Sweetie, it's not what you think. Don't, I snapped. Don't lie to me again. More silence. Then, a muffled voice in the background. Dad, what's happening? Did he send the money? I let out a humorless laugh. No, Dad, I didn't send the money. And I never will again. Ryan, Dad finally took the phone from Mom, his voice gruffer than usual. Let's not do anything drastic. We're family. I clenched my jaw. Funny how you only pull the family card when you need something. A sharp inhale. Ryan, we can fix this. Just send. I ended the call. Blocked the number. Then I sat back in my seat, letting the exhaustion wash over me. It was done. For the first time in years, it was really done. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought they would take the loss and move on. I was wrong. Because 3 days later, I got a notification. A new listing on Facebook Marketplace. The title? Like new 75-inch smart TV, $2,000 OBO. And in the photos, I saw it. The Christmas gift I had bought them. Still wrapped in the bow I had put on it. A cold wave of realization hit me. They had never appreciated a damn thing I had given them. I had spent 3 years sacrificing for them, only for them to turn around and try to sell my gifts the second they couldn't milk me anymore. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about money. This was war. I sat there staring at the Facebook Marketplace listing, my pulse thrumming in my ears. The TV. My gift. Barely a week after Christmas, and they were already trying to flip it for cash. I should have seen it coming. I should have known. But somehow, seeing the proof so blatantly displayed online, like they didn't even care who knew, lit something inside me. A fury so deep, so cold, that I knew I wasn't just going to walk away from this. They thought they could play me. They thought they could bleed me dry and toss me aside when I was no longer useful. They thought I was done. They were wrong. The first thing I did was take a screenshot of the listing, just in case they decided to take it down when they realized I'd seen it. The second thing I did was call my realtor friend, Lisa. Hey, I said the moment she picked up. I need you to do me a favor. Lisa and I had known each other for years. She handled most of the real estate deals in my network, and she owed me for a few financial tips I'd given her when she was starting out. Of course, she said. What's up? My parents, I said, gripping my phone tighter. They were looking at houses in Florida. I need to know if they actually put down an offer on anything. Lisa let out a low whistle. Oof, that doesn't sound good. Give me a few hours. I'll see what I can find. While I waited for Lisa to get back to me, I started digging deeper into their finances. I had already cut off their bank access, but I still had records of their spending. And it didn't take long to confirm what I had suspected. They had been gambling with my money. Investment schemes. Risky crypto purchases. Lavish spending sprees disguised as home improvements. And Evan? He had blown through every dime I had unknowingly given him. All those months he had spent flaunting his fake success online, preaching about building wealth, and hustling, had been funded entirely by me. Without my money, he had nothing. A grin tugged at the corners of my mouth. Good. They were finally going to feel what it was like to need. Lisa called me back later that evening. So, she said, your parents were in deep with a real estate agent in Florida. They put in an offer on a place last month. My stomach twisted. Tell me they didn't close on it. They didn't, Lisa confirmed. But here's the interesting part. They were banking on a second cash source to finalize the deal. I already knew what she was going to say before she said it. They were expecting you to cover the down payment, Ryan. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. Of course they were. They had built their entire future around my money. They had never thought I'd cut them off. Never thought I'd stop feeding their reckless spending. Now they were scrambling. And I was going to let them drown. It didn't take long for the cracks to start showing. The first sign came in the form of a very public argument between my parents and Evan, one that I didn't even have to witness firsthand because Evan, in his infinite wisdom, decided to rant about it online. His followers, what was left of them, were treated to a full-blown meltdown. So sick of fake people, man. You give, and the second you need something, they ghost you. Whatever. I'll make it on my own. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Evan had never made it on his own a day in his life. And now, without my money, he was finding out what that actually meant. A few days later, I got a text from my mom. Mom, honey, we need to talk. It's important. I ignored it. Then another. Mom, please call me. It's about the house. There it was. They were desperate now. I gave it a few more hours before finally replying. Me. No. That was it. Just one word. She tried to call immediately after. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the messages from my dad. Dad, son, we should handle this like adults. Let's talk. Dad, we need your help, Ryan. I didn't answer. Then, finally, Evan. Evan, bro, be serious. You're just gonna cut us off like this? Evan, you know you wouldn't be where you are without mom and dad, right? That one almost made me laugh. Me, where I am. You mean successful? Independent? Not drowning in debt? Yeah, that was all me, Evan. A minute later, I saw the 3 little dots appear on the screen, as if he was typing a response. Then they disappeared. For the first time in my life, I had the upper hand. and I was done playing nice. Over the next week, their situation unraveled faster than I expected. With no extra money coming in, the bills started stacking up. The mortgage payments, the credit card debt, the loans they had taken out against the business before selling it. They weren't just in trouble. They were sinking. I saw the Facebook listing for the TV disappear, most likely because no one was willing to pay $2,000 for something they had clearly just unboxed. Then Evan stopped posting entirely. I knew what that meant. No money. No brand deals. No new gear. No way to keep up the illusion. And then, finally, the call I had been waiting for. "Lisa, you're not gonna believe this," she said, sounding almost gleeful. "Your parents just pulled out of their Florida offer. They couldn't secure the funds." I leaned back, smirking at the ceiling. "They're stuck, Ryan. No vacation home. No fallback. And from what I'm hearing, they've got creditors breathing down their necks." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. It was done. They had spent years treating me like an ATM. And now? Now they were going to learn what it felt like to have nothing. The silence was deafening. For the first time in years, my parents and Evan had nothing to say. No calls. No texts. No guilt-tripping attempts to reel me back in. They were finally realizing what life looked like without me footing the bill. And I was loving every second of it. I watched from a distance as their world crumbled. The credit card payments they had once shrugged off were now catching up to them. The home renovation loans they had taken out, expecting me to cover, were stacking up interest faster than they could keep up. And Evan? He was spiraling. I knew because he finally cracked. His first return to social media in weeks was a pitiful attempt at sympathy baiting. "Evan, sometimes, the people you trust the most turn out to be the ones who betray you. Family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty. And some people just don't have it." Oh, this was good. Within minutes, his small remaining fan base was eating it up. Random follower 1. "Damn bro, what happened?" Random follower 2. "Stay strong, king. Haters gonna hate." Random follower 3. "Family drama? Spill." And then, my favorite one. Random follower 4. "Wait, isn't your brother the one paying all your bills?" Busted. Evan didn't respond, but I saw the likes on that comment climb steadily over the next few hours. The narrative he had tried to spin, poor, hard-working guy abandoned by his selfish brother, was already falling apart. Because even the internet could smell the bullshit. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number. "Unknown number. Ryan, we need to talk. Please don't ignore this." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I replied, "Me? Who is this?" I already knew. "Unknown number. Ryan, it's Dad. Please. We're in trouble." I leaned back, drumming my fingers against the table. "Me? I thought I wasn't handling things like an adult before. What changed?" A pause. Then, "Dad, I know you're angry, but we need help. Just a loan. Just until we get back on our feet." I smiled. "A loan?" The audacity was almost impressive. "Me? You don't have a business anymore. You don't have an income. How exactly are you planning to pay me back?" "Dad, we'll figure it out. Please, Ryan. You don't understand how bad this is." Oh, I understood. I understood perfectly. They had spent years bleeding me dry, throwing my money into Evan's failures, pretending they were struggling while living better than I was. Now they were actually struggling. And I wasn't going to lift a damn finger to help them. Me. No. I could almost hear the panic in the silence that followed. Then, the final message. "Dad, Ryan, we might lose the house." And there it was. The moment they really needed me. But the thing was, I didn't need them. Me. Then sell it. I blocked the number before they could respond. Days passed. Then weeks. I didn't hear from them again. But I heard about them. The fallout was glorious. I got a call from Lisa, my real estate contact, about 2 weeks after my dad's last desperate text. "Ryan," she said, barely able to contain her amusement, "you're not going to believe this." "Oh, I bet I will," I replied. "They put the house up for sale." I laughed. Loudly. "They're that desperate?" "They're drowning, Ryan. Word is they tried to get a loan, but with their debt and lack of income, no bank would touch them." I grinned. "So they finally ran out of lifelines." "They did. And guess what?" Lisa continued. "They're not even listing it properly. They're trying to sell it fast, undervaluing it just to get something before the bank forecloses." Oh, this was too good. My parents, who had spent my money upgrading that house, pouring in renovations, making it their personal luxury nest, were now trying to offload it for pennies just to stay afloat. Karma had never tasted so sweet. But then Lisa hit me with something I didn't expect. You know, Ryan, if you wanted to, you could buy it. I blinked. Wait, what? She chuckled. I mean, think about it. They're desperate. They need someone to take it off their hands. And you have the money. You could swoop in, buy it cheap, and do whatever you want with it. I sat back, rubbing my jaw. Buy the house. Their house. The same house they had once tried to trap me in, tying me down with endless guilt and financial obligation. The house they had expected to always be mine to maintain, while they and Evan reaped the benefits. Now it was slipping through their fingers, and I had the power to take it. The power to decide its fate. Lisa was still talking, but my mind was already made up. Send me the listing, I said. I was about to end this game, once and for all. The listing came through an hour later. I stared at it for a long time, the image of my childhood home flashing across my phone screen. The same house where I had grown up, where I had once believed love and family meant something. The house they had used against me. And now, it was mine for the taking. Lisa was right. The price was laughably low. They were desperate. Probably thought if they didn't sell fast, they'd lose everything. And they weren't wrong. The bank would be breathing down their necks soon. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about principle. I had spent years bending over backward for them, letting them bleed me dry while they lived in comfort. Now it was their turn to suffer. The process moved faster than I expected. Turns out, when someone is drowning in debt and on the verge of foreclosure, they'll sign just about anything if it means relief. A week later, I got a call from Lisa. Well, congratulations, she said, barely containing her laughter. You're officially the owner of your parents' house. I let out a slow breath, staring at the paperwork in my hands. I had done it. I had taken everything back. But I wasn't done yet. The fun part came next. I could have just kept the house. Could have moved in, rented it out, even resold it for a profit. But that wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel it. I wanted them to understand. So I sent a text to my dad's number, the one I had unblocked just for this. Me, hey Dad. Just letting you know, I bought the house. The reply came instantly. Dad, Ryan. What are you talking about? I grinned, picturing his face as I typed my next message. Me, you know, the house you just sold. The one you couldn't afford anymore. The one I paid for 3 years while you and Evan blew my money on garbage. Another long pause. Then, Dad, Ryan, this isn't funny. That house was our home. Oh, the irony. Me. Funny. You didn't seem to care about home when you were squeezing me for money to fund Evan's bullshit. But don't worry, I'll take good care of it. I waited, watching the little typing bubble appear and disappear. Then finally, Dad, Ryan. Son, please, don't do this. Where are we supposed to go? And there it was. The desperation. The fear. The realization that they had finally lost. I let them sweat for a minute before replying. Me, not my problem. Just like it was never yours when you were lying to me for years. I blocked his number again. Then, for good measure, I went to Facebook Marketplace. And I relisted that 75-inch TV. $50. First come, first served. The eviction notice hit them a week later. Lisa had helped me handle the legal side of things. Turns out, when you buy a house, you have full control over who stays in it. And since they were technically renting at that point, they had 30 days, not even a full month. And I made sure the notice was hand-delivered. By Lisa. She told me later that my mom cried. That my dad tried to argue. That Evan had the audacity to claim I was ruining his career. She told them the same thing I had. Not his problem anymore. I don't know where they ended up. Honestly, I don't care. I heard from a mutual friend that they're staying in some rundown rental, struggling to keep up with the bills without my money rolling in. Evan is still trying to make his entrepreneurship work, but without my funding, his whole persona is crumbling. Last I checked, his financial coaching page on Instagram had about 6 followers. The house? I didn't even keep it. I sold it at a profit 2 months later. Used the money to take my first real vacation in years. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free.